what is important about the warning strike is the fact that the federal government did not do what they were supposed to do. Everything you see in life has a reason. For the federal government or Mr. President himself to set up a team to discuss with labor after the sudden removal of fuel subsidy. Though it was a very painful thing, but it was a welcome development. We were only placing the cat before the horse, which is not supposed to be the case. However, Mr. President came in on the 29th of May. He had some time before the 6 months budgetary appropriation that was made by the former president, which is naturally supposed to end in the last day of June. So he had at least a month to have set up modalities before removing the fuel subsidy. The issue of subsidy is dated back into like 20 years before he came into power. Recall also further when in 2012, the president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, wanted to remove fuel subsidy. The current president of Nigeria, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in forefront of rejecting the fuel subsidy removal without putting in palliative modalities to cushion the effect. He made statements that is in public domain right now in 2012 January. And therefore, God help you that 13 years after you've made such a landmark declarations in support of Nigerian masses as to what needs to be done for Nigerian masses, you became president and you did not keep to your words, which you advised another president to do, is rather unfortunate. And Mr. President, having removed the first subsidy, and Labour confronted his office with the situation that we need to talk about the impact that will be created by this sudden removal. Having admitted the reason that this subsidy removal will cause great impact, adversely negative on the workers, decided to engage the organized labor and set up what they call Presidential Steering Committee on Subsidy Removal. The duty of that committee was to bring up agreement, resolutions that will help mitigate the situation. The NLC President Comrade Joe Ojero led the side of the NLC, while the TUC President also led the TUC President, the TUC members into the negotiations with the Chief of Staff.
All right, welcome to the show. It's the program The Love of People and Governance here on Spectrum Television. My name is Rachel David White, together here with Xavier Robert.
Hi Rachel, what's happening?
Of course, we're here and we are going to talk about trending issues here in Nigeria today. The first one is about the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC. Of course, it has explained why they shut the meeting with the federal government over increasing hardship and suffering across the country caused by the removal of fuel subsidy. Well, the NLC had refused to attend a last-minute reconciliatory meeting with federal government before embarking on its two-day warning strike. And speaking on the reason for shunning the meeting, sources in the NLC leadership told us that the Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, had held a media briefing where he allegedly castigated Labour leaders. Well, this reportedly forced the NLC leaders, according to reports, to shun the meeting that would have been held at the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment Federal Secretariat. And the minister was said to have threatened the NLC leaders, according to report at his briefing, for closing any chance that NLC would honor that particular meeting.
One of the visibly angry NLC leaders told the aforementioned publication that they had to shun the meeting so as to avoid possible arrest. The TUC ruled out any plans to join the two-day warning strike declared by the NLC, but the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC Kano State chapter had shut down government offices, banks and the power sector in the state in a warning strike against the removal of fuel subsidy.
Meanwhile, reports that the strike, which began this morning, was led by the state NLC vice chairman there in Kano, Ruruwai, told reporters that all government offices in the state were under lock and key, and that banks and the power sector also not operating. He said that they were proceeding to the airports to ensure that no flights took off. And the strike is in protest of the continued mass suffering and impoverishment experienced around the country, occasioned by the fuel subsidy removal. And the NLC has said that the removal of the subsidy will lead to a sharp increase in the price of fuel, which will have a negative impact on the poor and working class.
The strike is expected to continue tomorrow. And the NLC has said that it will review the situation and decide whether to continue the strike or not. That's tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course we also listened to the chairman here, the NLC chairman here in Akwa Ibom State.
James.
Yeah, Sonny James, talk about of course the demands they have placed before the federal government, talk about the coup and other stuffs as pertaining to leading to the strike actions and expectations of Nigerians, and why Nigerians should also worry. Well, a quick one, let's move away from that. When we come back with our guests, we'll discuss properly. Well, Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu assumed office as the 16th democratically elected president on May 29th after securing 8.8 million votes to win the country's 2023 presidential election, which was held in February, according to INEC's report. Well, tomorrow marks 100 days since President Tinubu has been in office, while the ICIR looked through several policies and actions taken by the president between May 29th and today, September 5th, 2023. Now, within these days, there have been appointments, dissolution of heads of agencies, implementation of policies, signing of bills and foreign journeys made by the president. Earlier,
the ICIR had reported on key decisions taken by the president and 18 new governors sworn in to office after 20 days, and the real cost of Tinubu's economic policies in 50 days in office. Now, here is a look at some of the activities, economic policies. While giving his inaugural speech, Tinubu announced the immediate removal of subsidies on premium motor spirits, commonly known as petrol or fuel locally. And this was the first economic action taken by the president. Now, the removal increased the prices of transportation and foodstuff by over 100%. The ICIR also reported several strike actions organized by the Nigeria Labour Congress over the agitations on the removal. Now, a few weeks later, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced the abolition of the segmentation in the foreign exchange market. By implication, the Naira currency floated after several years of regulations. The ICIR reported that the policy, after 2 weeks, increased the Naira to dollar exchange by 15.84%. Now later, Tinubu said 8,000 Naira was going to be distributed as palliative to 12 million poor households for 6 months before the policy was retracted for review. Now, the ICIR reported how feasible the palliative would benefit poor Nigerians, and by this review, the impact of conditional transfers by past administrations.
Sylvia, if we want to talk about the policies one after the other, we may not even have time to explain them all. So I think we'll just bring our guests in so we can talk properly. We have a virtual guest joining us from Osun State in the person of Citizen Olu. And of course, I also have a live guest here in the studio in the person of Barrister Martins Ukbe. So we'll go on a short break. When we come right back, our guests will be well seated in the studio and we'll talk better. And of course, also join our virtual guests who had been on standby waiting for us. So we'll go on a short break. When we come right back. The show continues, so do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What is important about the warning strike is the fact that the federal government did not do what they were supposed to do. Everything you see in life has a reason. For the federal government or Mr. President himself to set up a team to discuss with labor after the sudden removal of fuel subsidy. Though it was a very painful thing, but it was a welcome development. We were only placing the cat before the horse, which is not supposed to be the case. However, Mr. President came in on the 29th of May. He had some time before the 6 months budgetary appropriation that was made by the former president, which is naturally supposed to end in the last day of June. So he had at least a month to have set up modalities before removing the fuel subsidy. The issue of subsidy is dated back into like 20 years before he came into power. Recall also further when in 2012, the president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, wanted to remove fuel subsidy. The current president of Nigeria, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was in forefront of rejecting the fuel subsidy removal without putting in palliative modalities to cushion the effect. He made statements that is in public domain right now in 2012 January. And therefore, God help you that 13 years after you've made such a landmark declarations in support of Nigerian masses as to what needs to be done for Nigerian masses, you became president and you did not keep to your words, which you advise another president to do, is rather unfortunate. And Mr. President, having removed the fuel subsidy, and Labour confronted his office with the situation that we need to talk about the impact that will be created by this sudden removal. Having admitted the reason that this subsidy removal will cause great impact, adversely negative on the workers, decided to engage the organized labor and set up what they call Presidential Steering Committee on Subsidy Removal. The duty of that committee was to bring up agreement, resolutions that will help mitigate the situation. The NLC President Comrade Joe Ojero led the side of the NLC, while the TUC President also led the TUC President, the TUC members into the negotiations with the Chief of Staff, Right Honorable Bajamiabila, who was on the side of the government as the chairman of the meeting. Meetings went peacefully and resolutions were agreed. They arrived upon, and then they put themselves into a bond by agreeing to the resolutions. And then Mr. President said, give me some weeks, I'll go through it, and I will report back to you. And at the further stage, he said, okay, give me 8 weeks in a whole, that everything will begin and conclude within the 8 weeks. This 8 weeks eventually came to an end on the 19th of August. From the time the committee was set up, no meaningful thing was done until those resolutions were reached. And that's what prompted the NLC and the TUC to proceed on the mass action of August 2nd. Mr. President himself invited labor and said, no, don't go to the street again. Give me 1 week, I'll resolve the matter. From August 2nd to September 2nd, 1 week has not come. It didn't only stop at that. The president of the National Assembly, of course, our son, the son of Akwa Ibom State, Dr. Godswill Ogbonnagbabio, who is the president of the Senate, invited organized labor for a meeting and also promised to take over the matter, discuss with the president, revert back to labor in 1 week. This is the third week. 1 week has not come. All the parties that assumed to intervene on the matter went back to sleep. So the Nigerian Labour Congress now said, no, we cannot continue to wait in vain. Let there be a reaction on the side of the government as to
Welcome back to the show. It's still the program, The Law of the People and Governance. And before we went on the break, we introduced what we're talking about today. First off is the strike action, the 2 days warning strike action that's already kicked off today by the NLC. Of course, we had reports that the TUC had already backed out from the strike action. And also, we're also taking a look at the president's 100 days in office. I mean, his policies so far, it has been kudos and of course knocks here and there. So we take a look at the likes of George Bode had something to say, and the likes of Olusegun Obasanjo, the former president of Nigeria, had something to say as well. So we take a look at all of those issues today on our program. Live here in the studio we have with us in the person of Barrister Martin Zukbe. He is a human rights lawyer and of course a social political analyst, and also we're being joined virtually by Citizen Olu all the way from Ogun State. He is of course a software networking engineer and a political analyst. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. Xavier Robert, should I actually say welcome back again?
No, you would not be out of place to say that.
Okay. All right, so let's quickly head to the point. Let's check if our guest is here with us. Good evening and welcome to the show, Citizen Olu.
Hi, good evening.
It's good to have you.
Good to be on the show as well.
Okay, so sorry for keeping you off the screen for a while. We had to, of course, establish something that we can work on. So let me start with you. Now, before then, I'd like to introduce you to our guest in the house, and the person of Barrister Martin Zukbe. He's a human rights lawyer and a social political analyst as well.
Good evening, Citizen Olu.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, I said hello.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Citizen Olu.
Yeah, good evening.
All right, so let's head straight to touch a little of the NLC strike. Now, of course, we've seen strike actions. It's not a new thing in Nigeria. It's, would I say, a normal thing now where we get to see strike action, and of course, closed door meetings are being held between the labor union leaders, and before you know it, everything is settled, but the demands are still not being met. And this is not a demand that just emanated, they say, a few months ago. It's been something that has been happening for years. Do you think this is going to be anything different? Of course, one of their demands is that the minimum wage be reviewed from 30,000 naira to 200,000 naira. How feasible is this?
So, I mean, before I even begin to speak, I mean, we have to understand that the NLC in itself, which is supposed to represent workers up and down this country, regardless of geopolitical zone, regardless of political party, seems first and foremost to have been playing a partisan type of politics.
Why do you say
which
so?
I say so because they seem not to take some of the policies or some of the things that the government actually they don't take it in the most objective fashion. So I think they tend to be one of those sorts of organizations that over the years have been used to one specific way of dealing with government in this country. And I think they still haven't found a different way to elucidate upon their demands to the government in a way that is not antagonistic and in a way that doesn't put this threat of shutting down the entire nation when the government is actually putting policies in place which need time.